Okay. The gender pay gap. Frankly, a very controversial issue. Um, so controversial, in fact, that I'm going to start this whole lecture by remembering an event that took place in my classroom. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago? I don't remember. Time is frozen and also gone incredibly fast over this COVID period. I'm teaching this in class 1 year, okay, and I can see a student in my class kind of sitting there stewing in his juices. He's getting angry, and I'm looking at him, and I can see his face. So something I wish I could do with my students today. But anyways, let's not. Um, and I kind of call him. I'm like, hey, he's a he's one of my favorite students. He's athletic. I think he played sports. He was big and tall, handsome, great kid. Really friendly. I positive interactions with him every day. We really thought he was I still think he's a super high quality kid, right? And he's like, that's not true. Whoa. There aren't too many times in teaching I've run into a straight that's not true. I'm just teaching a book. This isn't me like freelancing, talking about whatever I want. He's like, it's not true. There is no pay gap. It's all political. It's this and that. And I was like, well, I'm trying to explain that a lot of it can be explained and some of it maybe not. It's gray area. We talk a lot about gray area in class. And this girl in my class stands up and she goes, what's your source? Where are you getting your facts from, dude? Right? And this is when it gets crazy because he looks at her and he goes, why don't you come say that to my face? I was like, what? I'm like, no. And I'm like, do I have to run over there and get in between these two? I'm like, nah, he's not. Would never. And she's tough, she's a tough girl. She's like, psh. So she turns around and she doesn't like walk between desks and get in his face, but she's like, what's your source? Where are you getting your facts from? And he's like, my dad. And she laughs in his face. She's like, your dad is not a fair source of information. And then his face turns red. He gets really angry, and I'm like, okay. you know, and I start walking in that direction, you know what I mean? And then they both kind of sit down and I'm like, thank goodness that's over. Um, it also happens to have happened on a night that was very close to open house. And his dad shows up in my class, and his dad is mad when he walks in my class. And this is after everything's over and I'm by myself, you know what I mean? I'm just sitting in there cleaning up, and here comes dad, I'm like, oh, why didn't you come in with the other parents? He wants to have a one-on-one conversation with me. Um, um, and I'm not an afraid person, but there was that moment of anger. Like I heard what happened in class the other day, and it was really unfair to my son, and I was like, really, tell me why, and everything calms down. He walks away, you're a great teacher, I'm like, why don't you send me some of your facts so I can have my students study your version of facts, and study the book, and we can balance our minds and put it in our heads and squish it around in the mixing pot of our brains and come up with our own answers, right? That's what education is. Especially for seniors, and it works out, but it was so weird, and I just kind of felt like, why? Okay, so this is a heated thing, and it is political, right? Because there's one political party that's calling it nonsense, and there's another political party that's saying it's overtly true, and the answer is probably in the gray area, in the middle. Where in the gray area is up to you to decide. I always say. Also. It goes to show how much young people, even seniors, fall back on their parents' opinions, right? Um, and then college comes around, and especially if you don't live at home anymore, you kind of sometimes flower. Is that the right word? Your mind, it matures. and you make up your own mind, including, your parents' opinion is big in that mixing pot of facts that you stir in. That's your brain that helps you decide whether or not these kind of issues are correct and where you stand. And then your professors and your friends and all the other things of being an adult, they all play into that. So now, why? What was I teaching that was so bad? Well, um, this is the number right here that gets people. 81%. Is it true that 81 that women make 81% that men make? It is true. That's a fact. Okay. Why though? Right? Um, is the first answer first thing we should ask. It doesn't always need to be a jump to just some extreme conclusion. Because I mean, if this was fact based on purely like, hey, other teachers that are women are making 81% of what I make. All men make 81% in all jobs. Then it would be like, whoop, 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 alarm, alarm, right? Fix, problem, right now. Everyone look. But that's not it, right? This is when you add all jobs and all wages all together. And this isn't, look, female teachers make the exact same I do, okay? Exact. It's public matter. We're on a pay scale. It's a salary system. Um, so let's say why. There are many reasons why. First, women oftentimes take time off to have babies. My wife has had two children, and after her first job, she was a journalist. She worked for a newspaper. She got pregnant. She couldn't get that job back when she had her first baby, and she took a secretary's job, and close to home, so she could run home and feed nurse the baby, at lunch. These were factors involved in it, And then the second time, my first child is my stepdaughter. It was me, and I was working. She just stayed home, and then she went back. She got her master's. Right? Now she makes more than me. But I digress. So yeah, babies, and then like she's almost, she's in her late 30s, and she's just barely starting her career. Look, I'm in my mid 40s and I'm like 20 plus years in, So then there's that factor too, that whole like I've been building and she hasn't, right? Because so she stayed home and or changed careers and professions because of children. I mean, that's a factor, folks. Truth be told, is that I am now the primary parent ever since she went back to with the kids, ever since she went back to college because of my job, right? Because my schedule matches their schedule more, and she works more hours and she makes more than me. Okay, she has a better job. Speaking of my job, a lot of the time women will choose careers that college majors that don't lead to the same pay as the male dominated careers or college college careers or that kind of thing. Look, I chose a job that's not that high paying. A job that's dominated by women. I don't have a high end, right? I can't ever make that much money, you know. There, and that's okay. I made that choice when I was young. It's important to me. I want to help kids. That's who I am. She has a job where the high end is much, much higher, right? Because she went back and got a master's, this kind of thing. So another factor is that studies have shown that women are oftentimes less aggressive in salary negotiation. Now, this is kind of a weird fact. I don't quite exactly know what to do with it. Why is that true? Is it really true? How can you really even decide this? What kind of studies are done? I'm going to call that one kind of a shaky ground fact. And then sometimes there is just plain old sexism. Okay. The survey, they've done surveys where they send out the exact same job application with a male name and a female name, and who gets more hits, who gets more returns. It's oftentimes the men. Who gets more salary offered? What, 13% more a man's going to make? I mean, that's a big deal, right? And here's some fun facts, or maybe not fun facts. 5% of all Fortune 500 CEOs are women. That means 95% of the most high-paying jobs in America belong to men. 3% of Hollywood movies are directed by women. Wow, 97% of a liberal field like movie directing are done by men. And I want to talk about this one in a second. You know what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause for a second because I want to get deeper on the job selection aspect of it. All right, so I wanted to take a look here at some of the highest paying jobs. in America. And I think, right away you're going to see here, these are like almost all doctors, which goes to show you that my whole desire for my daughters to become doctors is a real thing. There's a reason why. Psychologists, surgeons, gynecologists, physicians, surgeons, anesthesiologists, proctologists, orthodontists, physicians, family medical care, chief executives, nurses, dentists, pediatricians, airline pilot. Really? I had no idea. Computer, architectural and engineering managers, market managers, judges, magistrates. And we see here in our book on page 334 that there's a chart that's going to say that which jobs are more likely to be men and which jobs are more likely to be women jobs. And I think that you're going to find that a lot of them higher paying jobs are jobs that men generally take. A lot of the lower paying jobs are jobs that women generally take. I mean, construction is a very heavy male oriented career, not that high paying, unless you're like the foreman or maybe you have a, look, interesting fact, right? Coal jobs, oil field jobs, drilling jobs, these dangerous jobs, they're really high paying. And these are male dominated areas. You wouldn't think so, right? A coal job, digging coal, that's not high education, but they're going to pay you a lot because it's a good chance you'll die in your 60s if you take this job, working on an oil platform, an oil rig. If there's a fire, sorry, you're probably not going to make it. Male-dominated careers, fishing jobs. I remember when I was a kid, they used to be like, go to Alaska, be a fisherman, get paid $100,000 a year, live on a boat. And I was like, heck no, right? But there's a lot of money just to fish, right? Dangerous jobs, male-dominated oftentimes as well. Police and fire, these guys, they get paid a ton, way more than teachers, 100 plus, 150-ish, dominated by men. Teachers get paid much less. Our high end is like, 80 or something, dominated by women. Lawyers actually get paid a whole ton much as well, doctors. And a lot of these higher level doctors, the surgeons and stuff, are men. A lot of them are family care doctors are women. Nurses are dominated by women. So engineers, I have two cousins who are engineers. And they both start off their career making more than me. It was like, wow, but did I make a mistake, right? But not becoming an engineer. But these are math and science jobs. These are STEM jobs, which oftentimes are more male-dominated majors in colleges. So all of these factors, look, they play a part. Okay, they're not the whole story, but they play a part. When you look here, some of the top engineering jobs, computer jobs, petroleum engineer. You really want to be a petroleum engineer? It's a male-dominated career. Nuclear, a lot of these jobs are just more of a male-dominated jobs. So, yeah, these do play a role. The career you choose does play a role, and I hope that my students are out there choosing careers and they're looking at average pay and they're looking at future, what kind of career, are there going to be a lot of these jobs in the future, or is this a dying career where there's going to be less? My wife did when she picked her job as an OT, an occupational therapist, and she had to give up her old job as a journalism, which is a dying career, and they don't get paid a lot either, even though it's very honorable. And then there's the opposite side of that coin, right? Like, I've been teaching 21 years. And I don't want to, this breaks my heart to say, because I'm a man, but my female students on average do better. I've done the numbers every year. Female students outperform my boys. Why is that, boys? Why is that, boys? I was a boy once, now I'm an old man. I don't know. Is it because the early maturity, the mental maturity, boys are oftentimes more likely to do silly things? I don't know why that is. I'm not going to try and go down that road. So I think the real number at the end of the day is about 95%. Okay, they do studies where they take new college grads with no kids. They put out applications, same job, same career, same everything. Men still get paid 95% of what women make. Not 80%, right? 95%, but still a problem. Still a problem. That doesn't forgive it. We don't be like, oh, it's only 95%, no big deal. No, that's kind of a big deal. Um, it should be zero, right? Maybe half percent or percent, but 5% signifies a 5% problem. I mean, we've talked about men, names and studies show, and this is a problem, and I don't know how to specifically address it, other than to say that maybe this has to do with the fact that things were different back in the day, and my mom, I remember her telling me something like when she was young, she had to wear a dress to school, and then when they were allowed to wear pants, that was a big thing. And I said to myself, what does that mean? Allowed to wear pants if you're a Korean, you had to wear a dress? Is this real? That's what she tells me. So that kind of generation is still kind of the high earning controller, the baby boomer generation. I mean, I'm not sure. Look, I don't have answers, but it's really interesting to look at the facts. Last fact I want to show you is something that dad, well let's circle around and say, dad who got mad at me, okay, um, because I was teaching that thing to his son, right? Um, dad who got mad at me sends me an article. So I'm like, hey, send me an article so I can teach my students out of your article, right? And then we can all learn and we can try and balance things out and figure it out. Put all of these facts into the bowl that's my brain, squish it around and make my choices. He sends me an article and it says this. In selected majority minority cities, women aged 20 to 30, 25 to 30 who don't have babies actually make more money than men, and attend college at a 3-to-2 ratio than men. Okay, that's interesting. Selected majority minority cities. We're talking about cities where just a few, right? Where there's less white people than non-white people. And I wonder, what does that mean? Why is that true? Why are women attending college at a 3-to-2 ratio in these places? Does that disprove the gender gap, or does that say more about the culture of these cities that women are being more encouraged to go to college, and men, why aren't the men, boys, why aren't you going to college at a high rate in these cities? I think we're a majority minority city here in LA, not Woodland Hills, but LA. What about the culture of these cities is making girls go to college and the boys not? And then, of course, we do know that if you go to college, you're going to get paid more. So again, even in the studies that prove a point that, that the book doesn't make, okay, it still it's still gray area. It's not, pay gaps doesn't exist, right? It's, well, why? And that should be the question to almost everything, not just economically. Like when you hear something and you're like, that's weird, like ask why, dig deeper. Don't just jump right to that conclusion. Because very few things are simple yes, no answers in this world.